Welcome, everybody. First item on the agenda is reviewing the board agenda for June. We'll start on page 8 with the public hearings, as usual. And the first public hearing is the budget, the fee increase in Reg 3, as well as the proposed goal and priority objectives. Mike, do you want to give a quick rundown?
Good morning. So there really hasn't been any material changes to this proposal since the budget workshop, at least from a numbers perspective. All the goals and objectives and mission statement have been updated. Those have been provided to the governing board through Wayne's weekly report, and then also through the documentation that you'll get for the board meeting. Just a couple of reminders. Obviously, the hot items are we're proposing a 2.5% fee increase on all fees for CPI. We're proposing an additional 16% this year and 16% next year for Title V permit and annual operating fees. In addition, we're proposing a 4% increase on permit fees and operating fees for non-Title V facilities. The Title V facilities increase is significant. This is to cover shortfall that the district's known about for a period of time. We had the EPA come out and audit us last year. They wrote up an audit finding saying that we should be recovering these costs. This is really the whole time I've been here. I'm looking at Mark Abramowitz. I think Dr. Liu every year as part of the budget has mentioned our lack of cost recovery on Title V. It was talked about at the budget workshop. With that, I think unless Wayne has something to add here, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
The only thing that I'd like to add is that in the last, not this last Friday, but the Friday before, in the weekly report, there was a proposed revision to the mission statement. And hopefully you all had a chance to look at that one. That one, I think, reflected a lot of the input, not only from staff, but from the board members as well. So I just wanted to make sure that you all had seen that. It's something actually I like quite a bit. So again, just wanted to make sure that you were aware of it.
Any other questions on 28? Okay, if there's none, we'll move to 29, which is a public hearing on the amendments to Rule 1147. Just want to note, if you look at the title to that item, it starts out with certifying the final subsequent EA. That language is going to appear in rule amendments or any items that have a environmental assessment associated with it going forward. Legal has told us that's a little safer to do it that way, so you'll start seeing that going forward. But Tracy, you want to give a brief summary of where we are?
As many of you know, Rule 1147 was adopted back in 2008 to address emission reductions from small miscellaneous sources that weren't already covered by another source-specific rule. In 2011, it was amended, and a couple of things that came out of that amendment. One was Rule 1153.1, which was adopted to address bakery ovens. And the other was a technology assessment that we've presented to the Stationary Source Committee a couple of times. As a result of that as a result of the tech assessment, one of the main elements of the proposed amendment is to exempt the existing in-use equipment that emit less than a pound per day. And that relief will come. There's a compliance date of July 1st coming up in the next month and a half that we'd have about 5,000 sources subject to that would not be able to meet that limit due to technological and economical constraints. Another element of the proposal is to exempt the less than 325,000 BTU per hour units. Those units, even if they operate 24 hours a day, will emit less than a pound per day, which is less than the NSR threshold for BACT. There's a couple other elements of the proposals to try to make things easier, such as manufacturer guarantee associated with burners, and to lower the cost as opposed to a certification or a source test. In all, the emission reductions that will be delayed, not totally foregone, but delayed, are 0.9 tons per day. That represents less than 25% of the overall SIP committed reductions, but we will get those over time as units start to convert and either change out their burners or change out their units entirely. There's a 0.03 ton per day permanent emission reductions. Foregone, that represents less than 1% of the overall SIP commitment for the rule. One of the other elements that I do want to point out, and it's part of the resolution, is that we've committed in consultation with stakeholders to do outreach to all these facilities. A lot of them are small businesses, they're not necessarily sophisticated. So we're going to do a two-pronged approach for outreach. The first one will be a notification that July 1st deadline is no longer there, so people don't have to worry about submitting applications for permit modifications. And then another one is going to be a more long-term effort to work with compliance and work with our enforcement folks to create a guideline to help people chart and go through their compliance with the rule. Because many of these sources are just only have one or two pieces of equipment, small business, and they do need the assistance. So with that, answer your questions.
One question on the Lone Ox burner issue, are we doing any follow-up on that? In regard to, I guess it's primarily the printing, coding, folks saying that there was problems with
It was a spray booth, yeah. And we briefly reported to the governing board last month on the follow-up to what was discussed at Stationary Source Committee, and maybe Tracy, you can kind of give an update.
Yeah, so what we did was after that was brought to our attention, we did have our engineering folks go out and look at the type of burner. It was a Midco burner, automotive spray booth. Because this was a new issue that we were unaware of, we went back to the permit system and pulled all the permits that we were aware of, which was about 130 permits that had that type of burner. We called as many as we could, kind of doing an informal survey, and found that there were a couple other folks that had this issue, but it was really more of an issue with the control system and temperature control as opposed to necessarily the burner itself. And over 90%, if you will, or 50% of the of the facilities that have those units that we were able to get a hold of actually had positive feedback with regards to the burner itself.
If I can add to just what Tracy said, regardless, Midco is going to be working together with the gentleman, I can't remember.
Jerry Anderson.
Jerry Anderson, thank
Yes.
you. And I think they're going to be replacing the burner.
Yeah,
regardless,
at no cost, they're going to replace the burner.
And also they'll be improving their control
Yeah.
system. So I'm hoping there'll be a good resolution to the gentleman's work.
Yeah, and the spray booth manufacturer also went to Mr. Ender's facility, and they found that there was a baffle that was being left open that should not have, or maybe it's the opposite way. But anyway, with that correction, the cycling on and off of the burner system was resolved. So it's just the temperature control with the gun, which we believe changing out the burner with a different control system should resolve this issue. You just have to do it.
So it appears the issues are isolated in just a few cases, and there are solutions. So. All right, any other questions on that? All right, so the last public hearing, item 30, this is largely administrative, the hoops that EPA makes us jump through when they have kind of a new interpretation of how Clean Air Act requirements need to be met. So this is just they wanted us to do just a board-approved certification that we have an NSR program and that it meets all the requirements, which is all we're doing here. Any questions on that?
How long have we had that NSF program since?
Since the beginning of
I was gonna say.
1990, whatever, right?
77.
77. Okay, if there's no questions on 30, let's move back to the beginning of the board agenda, which is page 2. And again, I know there's some items that are not available. I don't know, Nancy, how many? Some have been made available, I believe, this morning. We're working hard to, those will all be available, obviously, by the board package tomorrow. So the first item is the minutes. Anyone, if you haven't seen it, I guess there's not much we can do on that. Second item are the set hearings for rules in July. The two rules in July are Rule 1118, which is amendments to our refinery flaring rule, and the other rule is Rule 1466, which is a rule that applies to controlling particulate emissions from excavation and moving of soils that have toxic air contaminants in the soil. Because these are just set hearings, I won't go into detail, but if anyone has any questions about where we are with those or what we're trying to do, I'd be happy to answer them.
The soils, would that affect Caltrans? Because there's lead in the soil every time they do a freeway project?
So the applicability of the rule that we're proposing is only going to apply to sites that have been designated to be contaminated by the proper authority, which could be EPA, DTSC, the State Water Board, regional water boards, and we have a provision that if there's information that we have come across and meets certain criteria, that the executive officer can deem that site subject to this rule.
What about Krupas? I think Krupas also have.
Do they have that authority?
Underground storage tank removal. Krupas have that authority.
This generally, we have Rule 1166 for VOC contaminated soil. This is kind of filling a gap between that rule that doesn't cover toxic metals in soil and our Rule 403, which covers dust from those types of operations in general. But through Exide and various other situations we've run into over the past several years, we'd want to tighten up the practices and the dust control and do some monitoring when that soil is actually contaminated.
I just got a note the webcast is not working.
Where's our, Mark, take care of that.
Okay, well, we're on.
Take care.
Thank you.
So, any other questions on either of those set hearings?
Yeah, on, also with 1466, and I attended some of the work group meetings. I thought that staff did a great job in kind of crafting the design here and not stepping on the toes of the other agencies. But I did have some questions about those activities that occur at schools. And my understanding is that if the monitored levels in the air don't reach a certain threshold, then this rule is not applicable.
I don't believe that's the case. Susan's more familiar and she's in her HAZWOPER training, so she couldn't be here. But I believe the rule's applicable in all cases. When you're doing the monitoring and you exceed a threshold on the continuous PM10 monitoring, that would cause you to curtail operations and apply other measures to control dust.
Okay, so it's applicable, but you don't have to mitigate until you get above that level.
But we're also trying to keep activities from occurring when school is in session. And
Right.
have to double check of whether that only applies when you exceed the threshold or in general.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I was a little bit concerned about, that if it doesn't reach the threshold, then you don't have those mitigation measures. And at a school, I'm just wondering whether or not that's appropriate. Particularly since, 1470 came out of the need to reduce, toxic exposure at schools. And, here we are having activities going on, also using likely diesel equipment. So it would be good if you could kind of highlight that.
I think the board direction was pretty clear. They thought that was ridiculous, that would happen during school. And as I recall, it was LA Unified that had wanted to have that ability to do so. But I think that based on that committee meeting, we had said they want to argue for it, they can argue in front of the board for that.
Well, what they were asking for, they actually wanted to continue the work during school hours,
Right.
even if it exceeded that level.
Right.
But my understanding is that the current staff recommendation is that below those levels, they don't have to do any of that mitigation.
Well, there is a set of enhanced mitigation and dust control that everyone's gonna have to do
Okay.
beyond 403, regardless of whatever you get in the monitor. Again, I apologize for not being familiar with the latest details of where we are, but I think there are some enhanced measures if you're at a school or sensitive receptor type situations. Now, I'll have to double check of how the threshold trigger, which should apply to everybody, if there's anything different that we treat that with schools. But the request from LAUSD that they can continue to operate under whatever condition we find out, when I look at the rule, I'll find out when the kids are there is not something we wanted to entertain.
Right, well, if you could look at that a little bit more carefully and consider maybe requiring them to cease activities when, well, not only during school hours, but a lot of times you have these facilities which you've got soccer going on, which is really more of a high-risk activity than kids just sitting in a classroom when it comes to exposure to toxics. You also have situations where you've got a school and there's a playground or park next to it where they have these similar types of soccer and other activities, but it's not actually part of the school property. So you ought to consider maybe a distance from that. Doesn't have to be, or something adjacent where it's considered as if it's on the property.
Okay, we'll take a look and I'll talk to Susan and
Martin, I think we had committed to bring it back to committee. I know we did so on 11/18, we bring that back.
I don't think we made that commitment, but I think if there's significant changes.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think so, but.
Well, on 11/18, I thought we certainly
We did, for 1118 we did,
11/18, yeah.
Okay.
1466.
Well, because there was the other issue about sort of a de minimis, right? Boeing raised that issue at the
Right,
committee meeting.
right. But we were gonna work on that. I mean, again, if there's significant issues that come up, we could always come back, but if we can resolve everything.
Yeah.
You'll see the language, the 30-day package, so
Okay,
let us know.
Are we expecting much public on 11/18?
I don't know how much. I haven't heard. I just had one of our monthly calls with the environmental groups, and they didn't raise any huge concerns. We've had several working groups, and they have pushed to have a little more stringent requirements in the rule. And as I told them, that we have a desire to get something done quickly, and there's a lot of other things we might do within the rule, but that would require a big CEQA document, and if we're going to mess with the fees, there's a lot of analysis that has to be done because of Prop 26, so we're kind of deferring that to a phase 2 that'll start next year.
And when you say public, Andy, did you mean Enviro,
Or
NGOs, or did you mean
residents who,
WISPA? And,
or residents who were,
okay.
from Torrance or whatever. I mean, I haven't been following this that closely, but
CBE testified at Stationary Source and had a list of things they were asking for. And we're considering the ones that we can do quickly, and some of the other ones, if we did, we would be a significant delay. So there's a couple important things we want to do quickly. One is get rid of the cap on the fees, and the second, which we can do. And then the second one is incorporate some of the most important elements of the EPA rule. And one of those is they call it 3 strikes and you're out, and it's not, but it's actually a limitation on the large flaring events. And if you go beyond those limitations, then it's actually a violation, which our rule doesn't have.
The removal of the cap would have impacted maybe a handful of incidences.
There's only
Only
one facility and in 2 years so far.
That would be excellent. I mean,
Torrance, yeah.
Just successful.
So it's definitely feasible to not hit the cap.
and you folks had the first workshop or the first 2 workshops in the community.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have one, I think, next week, Tuesday, here. Any other questions on those? All right, page 3, item 3, Matt.
So item 3 is a research project that we're proposing to conduct with the University of California Riverside at CSERT. It's to look at the formation of secondary organic aerosols which are formed in the atmosphere from vehicle emissions, although it's unclear how much it's contributed by diesel or heavy-duty diesel and natural gas engines. Since we're already doing the 100 truck in-use emissions testing, we thought it'd be a good opportunity to also look at secondary organic aerosols formation. So the neat thing about this project is they're actually taking the ozone chambers that we help fund that are mobile, they back those into behind the trucks, they collect the emissions in these mobile chambers, and they put the chamber in their light facility to simulate the daylight, and so they can actually take it directly from the vehicle and put it into the ozone chamber. The second part of that project is, so we're asking for $85,000 to conduct that study. And then we're also asking for assistance to do the 100 truck study for CSERT and West Virginia University to hire some consultants to help recruit the trucks for each of the different natural gas and heavy-duty diesel trucks. And that's with Gladstein Anderson Associates and Mari, which is Myrtle Gowden, who used to be the prime professor at WVU, who's now at a different university at Nevada. So those are the two components of that project. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So is this an add-on to
It is.
the existing, that's why
It's the.
it's not that much money?
Yeah, you might remember this was that the board approved this big 100 truck in-use emissions testing. So this is just an add-on to look at SOA formation.
So they put the truck on a dyno and then pipe it into the big,
Right, and we're gonna compare diesel, natural gas, we're gonna do different locations and different duty cycles.
do they do on-road testing? 'Cause I know they have
They
that
do,
mobile sort
Right,
of.
they have the big
testing.
truck chassis that can fall around, they put the trailer onto the actual tractor and they can drive around and set routes, that's right.
Very cool. And I had never heard of secondary organic aerosols before.
Now you have. It's
Been around,
PM
I've
2.0.
been around a while.
Hi, Diane.
Hey, so we know that, with NOx emissions, the different feedstocks impact NOx emissions, or different gas feedstocks. So do we know with SOA, if different feedstocks have different SOA emissions components, and so?
Yeah, I'm not the atmospheric scientist, Phil probably knows better than I do, but I think part of the research is to identify whether there is a greater impact due to diesel versus natural gas in this.
But not natural gas versus, say, renewable gas feedstock?
Yeah, I don't think much is known about that, at least
Okay.
from what I've seen. I think one good question would be like the biodiesels versus
That's what I'm
the
talking about.
diesels.
Yeah.
That might be something we need to look at in the future. Not expecting too much differences between the natural gas and the renewable natural gas,
Okay.
because the composition is a lot
Very
more similar
similar,
than
yeah.
the two diesels, but something we could look at. We don't know, SOA from natural gas may not be much there. There might not be anything there, but no one's really.
You can
done
find
that.
out, yeah, thanks.
So the next project is associated with our capabilities to do field monitoring of particulate matter. So we're asking for 3 distinct appropriations in this board letter. One is to upgrade our PM weighing room. So in order to measure the particulate matter down to the very fine masses that we need to have the capability to undertake, we need to have a humidity and temperature controlled room. And if you've ever taken a tour of the lab, you've seen this. It's our PM weighing room where it is controlled. We recently did an upgrade, and so now we're going to fine tune that upgrade so we don't get any large temperature swings. So that's one part of the request. The second is to look at 2 different types of new FEMs, or federal equivalent monitors for PM. Currently, we are using FRMs out in the field, which is a filter-based monitoring technique. These FEMs, these new ones, have continuous monitoring, so we'll have to get almost real-time data, and so we're going to compare those to our existing FRMs, federal reference monitors. And the final request in this board letter is to purchase 2 additional mobile air monitoring platforms. These are the small trailers that you see that we deployed out in Aliso Canyon and other places where we put instrumentation that will leave it there on site and take measurements. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on that request. The next 2 are with Fred.
Okay.
The next one, item number 5, is our proposed award for 33 electric school buses for $8.4 million. We are co-funding this with the Air Resources Board $120,000 per bus from exit program, and the remaining balance from us is $248,000 for the bus and also additional $20,000 for charging station. We are awarding all the applicants that were located in EJ areas. We are proposing 2 awards per school district that has applied for this program, except for 3 schools that they requested just 1 bus. So a total of 33 buses. Any questions on this item?
What's the holdup last time? We got told, was there?
We wanted to look at the list of awardees and reevaluate our proposal, so nothing has changed compared to last month we had it. Any other questions? The next item is just a technical correction. We did award our year 18 Farm Oil program and then awarded some DERA funds with the Farm Oil funds funding the project. There is a return fund of the DERA for about $225,000 that we had awarded. We want to expend this funding in a timely manner so there are no issues with EPA. So what we are suggesting is we have selected 2 projects that we know they're going to be completed on time with requirements of DERA. So we are just asking to substitute that amount of the Car Moyer program with the DERA funds, and then we will reallocate the Car Moyer funds that will be freed up from this program, this amendment to other projects. No change in projects.
Any questions? All right, Sam?
Good morning. This item is one of a series of contracts with Google for advertising. This particular one is for our Check Before You Burn program, which, as you know, runs from November 1st through the end of February each year. So as we did this past year, we have a 2-part outreach program for Check Before You Burn for this year. Part of this will be this Google contract. The other half will be for an outreach effort through a local public relations contractor, which has just been approved by the board. The purpose of both of these contracts is to inform residents about the Check Before You Burn program, the need for it, hopefully to motivate them to comply with the program to help reduce PM emissions, and also to inform residents as to when we actually issue a no burn alert, so they know when we're asking them to take a simple action and improve air quality. Happy to take any questions.
How many no burn days did we have this winter, since it was raining?
We had only 8 this past year, lowest number in several years.
How does that help us with our PM?
It
Like a
does
bunch?
significantly. I think for 2016, I did present at Mobile Source recently. I think our design value, our 1 year, our 98th percentile for the 1 year, we have to take a 3-year average of that, was right at the standard, was at 35. So if we have a couple more years like that, they would be attaining the 24-hour standard. Any questions on Sam's item? Well, the next one is Mike or Chris?
Yeah, I'll take it. Is it going?
Yeah.
Okay. So according to Chris, it's up and running now, probably more important than this item necessarily. This item is a transfer of funds, so these are monies that were already budgeted, they're in capital outlays, and we just need to move them to services and supplies. This is part of the implementation plan for the GIS improvement project that the board, that the admin committee has reviewed and approved over the last several months. So what this basically does is request authorization to purchase some licensing from Esri. Those would be sole source, and to purchase some equipment using the approved vendor list. And the reason we're requesting the sole source with Esri is the assessment specifically identified Esri as the platform that would make the most sense for the district to use, just based on market share and long-term financial viability. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this item.
Just curious, what kinds of stuff is the GIS system used for to map, like vulnerable areas or how?
Yeah, so just as a basic user, I'll let Chris go into more detail, but as a basic user, if I want to look at the air quality index,
Okay.
that's probably the first improvement that's already been made, that I think is utilized regularly. Chris can
Right,
talk some more.
the forecast maps are up there, the daily air quality map that gets updated hourly is up there currently.
Great.
And putting more things up there as we go.
We use it for operational stuff, like creating our environmental justice maps for different programs, and different, we use it quite a bit in planning and other divisions.
So since you use it in other divisions, that's why the sole source, because then they can integrate everything.
Yes, can all use the same system.
And we're using them in the city, and they're trying to integrate our departments that never communicated before. Now we can overlap all this data.
We
Yeah.
keep creating layers that are available to everybody for
Yeah.
different purposes, and everyone has access.
ESRI is pretty much the acknowledged leader in all government GIS now.
Yeah.
I mean, it really helps our consistency and efficiency.
Right. And transparency, really, too.
Yeah.
Based in Redmond, got a job for the IE when I can.
Okay, any other questions on that item? Okay, item 9, Kurt?
This is real simple. It's to appropriate an additional $250,000 to pay outside attorney's fees.
Questions?
The big cases being excised or?
Exide is the big ticket item, continues to be.
Just got sued today.
Yeah, and
Yesterday.
yeah, we got sued over an EIR that we did in connection with the Tesoro refinery. But that we'll get reimbursed for, but we'll be out of pocket for some period of time as long as the litigation is in the works.
Okay, any questions on that? No questions. Okay, page 5, item 10. Craig?
That's what we say. Yeah.
This passes through our board to approve MSRC actions. Any questions on that? All right, item 11, I don't know if Barbara's not here, but Kurt, would you like me to cover,
Sorry.
or do you want to cover the locomotive petition?
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I'm not on our legal team. But essentially CARB,
Lawyer speak.
yeah, I'll try. CARB submitted a petition to US EPA, along the lines of we submitted our low NOx heavy duty truck petition for CARB to move forward with Tier 5 standards for locomotives, and also some additional requirements for remanufactured locomotives that would help accelerate the cleanest locomotives nationally. We'd also like them to be used in South Coast. But anyway, this is about CARB's petition and just a letter of support for that petition, authorizing staff to do so.
I think, I forget which committee this went to, I think there was a question in regard to other states, maybe joining in, like on the truck,
Yeah.
we had some states
Yeah.
that joined in. Are there any states joining?
Well, we were going to try to get some other supporters. I don't know where we are with that just yet.
Because if we don't, I mean,
Yeah.
we have no chance of telling again, this, you don't have support from some of the eastern states.
Yeah, so I think there are 2 avenues that we could reach out to. One is NACA and the other is APCA. Those are the 2 groups. APCA, I think we can reach out to them. I'm not sure where they would be. They tend to be a little bit more conservative. But NACA is the one that we had reached out to, and I know that Supervisor Ashley really sort of pushed the importance of the locomotives given the number of train trips through his area. So we'll reach out to NACA on this one.
So just FYI, because it's kind of cool, in Mojave, we have 3 cement plants in our county. I think they were 11 in the state, something like that. But anyway, Mojave, you just used $1 million of the Carl Moyer funds CMEX mine has a railroad that carries material from the quarry to the processing plant in Victorville. And they just use carbon moly to replace a 1964 locomotive with a Tier 4 engine, which has some additional controls that gets it to almost Tier 5. So, and sometimes Mojave can't give away their carbon moly money, so it's kind of a cool project.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Any other questions on this?
Yeah, do we have any indication, formal or informal, as to how EPA might respond to this petition? And maybe I'll open it up to a more general question. Have we got any indication so far this year as to how EPA is responding to various requests from?
I'm not sure on this one, but.
So we were just in DC last week, meeting with EPA, DOT, DOE, with the administration officials and Congress. And, you know, right now there's still a dearth of political appointees within EPA. And so EPA, for all practical purposes, is almost on hold. And the impression that we had in our meetings with the two senior political appointees were that they were waiting input from the administration. And basically my sense is that the agency is going to do whatever they're told to do by the White House. But what was very clear in our meetings from last week was that Congress has a very different idea of what EPA should be doing than what the White House is going to be doing. So I think one of the terms we heard was they propose, we dispose, and that was by a chair of one of the appropriation subcommittees. And then another chair of one of the appropriation subcommittees said, I hope they learned their lesson through the continuing resolution and the omnibus financial package. And so, you know, there was a lot of discussion in terms of the programs that were going to be funded and where the agency's priorities need to be. And I think I had heard from EPA just yesterday that it was kind of funny because they're being directed by the White House, you know, under executive orders to scale down, and yet Congress is saying, no, here's the funding, you need to do that. So EPA is in a tough spot right now, and I think that from my perspective, the congressional budgeting process is going to be the key in terms of what the agency does and how it moves forward.
I do think at the staff level of EPA and in the divisions, I mean, they're doing the technical work, they're continuing with the technical work, like the low NOx petition on the heavy duty. OTAC is moving forward with that. They haven't been told not to. I think, you know, when they start proposing regs is when we'll find out.
But that's again where Congress will come in, and we did a lot of outreach on that very issue. And we talked about the requirement for that, and we talked about other states. One of the things that we did was the 170. We did a briefing on California waiver to its impact on the 177 states, the states that adopt California standards. And I think we had about 15, 17 people participate in the Capitol building. There was 1 or 2 actual members that participated. So there's a tremendous understanding of not just the clean air benefits, but the economic importance as well of what California's waiver means for those other states.
Thanks. Any other questions? All right, so we're gonna move through we'll move through the receive and file reports. Item 12, legislative public affairs report. If no questions. Hearing board report is available if you have any questions. Civil filing, civil penalties report.
Do we think we're gonna reach budgeted amounts for penalties this year?
Yes.
It's like what, 4 million-ish?
We budget 5 million. Kurt's gonna revise his answer now.
Okay, item 15, I know you don't have, that's the monthly lead agency project list. Item 16, RFQs. Any questions? Item 17, I realize you may not have, might be one change to that when it comes through. We're discussing that now. But it's nothing, not a lot of wholesale changes at this point. Item 18.
Bill, if I could just put a plug in on this item. If there's an item or an information management or an IT project that you're wondering about that you haven't heard about in a while, we're reporting back to the admin committee on a monthly basis with a report that gives an update on everything that's going on. So if there's one that strikes your interest or you're wondering what's happened to it, take a look at this report. You should see it on there.
Okay, so we're on to page 7, in the board calendar. Anything on item 20 or 21? Ledge committee. I know you haven't seen the package, but you see the bills here. Any questions on ledge committee actions?
No, but I have a question about this. This is kind of off air quality issue, but the proposal AB5 something or other to come in with a single payer insurance. Are you familiar with that? Yeah.
Vaguely.
How will that impact us if that passes in regard to our insurance programs? It would eliminate our insurance programs?
Can't even answer that for you. John O'Bear is not here, so I can't about it.
Do you know the author? Do you remember?
So it's,
Oh, you didn't, okay, all right, so we've got enough to chase that down.
yeah, I think it's worth a look at it. To me, as a taxpayer, I look at it and it suggested a 15% increase in payroll tax if it goes through. So shit, it's a lot of money.
This is for the California Universal Healthcare Coverage?
No, single payer. And it had enormous support, enormous support. I went through 3 pages of organizations supporting this, and primarily it's the insurance industry opposing it, and with a super majority and the leader of the Democratic Party in California, oh, we're all for it. I don't know what that means.
It's a matter of paying for it, I think.
Doctors,
300 billion a year.
Oh, yeah, the nurses, they're right there with it, so it's big support. And then, well, as Supervisor Kuhl came out with this several times in the past few, when she was in the assembly, but you didn't have the supermajority. So, because that would require it to go to the public, because it would require 2/3, but it requires only 2/3 of the assembly. So I think it's worth maybe taking a look at.
This is incredibly super local, but we just got a bill we sponsored off the floor, but we used air quality as a rationale. We've got a really cool project in Bloomington with the community center, Rockbury Senior Center, affordable housing, and we've got authority. Well, we got it off the assembly floor to move a park. It's right up against the 10 freeway, and it's a bad neighborhood. The air quality implications are horrible, so we're going to move the park over near this cool mixed-use development we've been working on for years. We're also going to go after some greenhouse gas money, but the criteria of the Strategic Growth Council, we couldn't qualify. There are a couple of density requirements that just don't make sense for.
Bill number?
I think it was 1330 Reyes. I mean, it's super local, but we use the air quality as kind of a rationale to get authority to move this park. Because it was built with state bond money, so we need legislation to get authority to move the park.
Also, out in that area, there's is it a $50 million trailer bill to SB1 for warehouse and trucking? Did that get through the full legislation?
The trailer bill after SB1, did that? Right, that was all part of the deal, that was signed into law.
Okay, that was done. So I don't know how that's going to get implemented, but there's $50 million approved. clean equipment at warehouses and empire pretty much. So. All right, any?
Diane?
Yeah, just, it's just around the package, is it possible to just give a quick thumbnail of these four, just, what do they do, where we're at? And just real quick.
Sure. So SB 378, and that's actually, we had a conference call this morning on it. This is the assembly version to extend cap and trade programs until 2030. Additionally, it's not going to allow any facilities to emit any more than what they averaged between 2014 and 2016. We took a work with the author, and actually, like I said this morning, we had a conference call this morning on it. We have some language we want to put into it that we feel, as it's written now, will actually hurt our ability to continue to regulate some of the sources. So, I don't know if you want to talk more about it.
So there's, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of opposition to this bill within CAPCOA and the other air districts. And I know in particular, Bay Area is very strongly opposed to the current language, in part because it has ARB doing some of the functions that the districts are currently doing. It's somewhat critical of the local districts, particularly with their work regarding toxics and criteria pollutants. And so once they're moving into the stationary issues that the districts have, that's why the districts are so opposed to it. So what we've actually done is we requested a meeting with Assemblywoman Garcia to actually discuss these. I don't think she wants to go, or maybe she does, but it'd be nice to have the air districts and CAPCOA supporting this instead of opposing it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to resolve some of those differences.
With jurisdictional governance questions.
Well, and I think it's a basic understate that. I think there's a misunderstanding of what is done at the local level.
Yeah.
And what is actually being accomplished.
Got it.
So that was one of the other things, was that we were asking the other districts to actually start compiling some of the successes that we've had, because we just don't think that's understood.
Got it.
And then AB 890, I'll have Philip. Sure.
Yeah, the AB 890, that's focused on local initiatives and basically making sure that there's a CEQA review applied to initiative if appropriate, so that it creates a process for assessing an initiative and then putting it through the CEQA process if it's appropriate. It'll still put the initiative before the voters unchanged, but it'll at least have that extra information out there. AB 1073 is focused on this particular clean truck, bus, and off-road vehicle program, and it makes sure that it extends, I believe it's 20 to 30% of the funds going towards clean, heavy-duty vehicles, to make sure that it's allocating the proper amount of money towards developing that particular type of technology. And then AB 1647 by Maritsuchi, that's basically kind of in line with one of our ongoing local rulemakings dealing with fence line monitoring systems and things like that for refineries.
Mm-hmm.
So we took a work with author position on that bill just to basically make sure that the two processes, our local process is going to be in line with whatever's potentially being done at the state level. So we've been having communications with the author's office ongoing.
And the CEQA, the decision to just watch it was, can you summarize what the rationale was for that?
Well, it was a staff recommendation to support, and I believe during conversation during the Ledge Committee, the rationale was there was concerns about local rulemaking authority, local control, and essentially, this might be warehousing is one of the typical type of projects that might kind of use the initiative process to bypass CEQA review. So technically, if a local government wanted to bypass review, that takes away their power. If they want to make sure that CEQA is being, that CEQA review is happening, then it adds to their power. So there was a debate as to what was appropriate. The Ledge Committee recommended watch in the end, and it'll go on to the board for.
I think the impetus was the World Logistics Center, I think.
And others, the stadium in Inglewood, and the stadium downtown. It's been used rarely, but has been used, and it's viewed by many as a loophole in the law. This is trying to close it, but you have a watch position.
It's opposed by CSAC And it's in suspense and supposed to be heard today. It's in appropriations today.
Tomorrow, today or tomorrow, I don't know.
I think it's today. There's like 400 bills in appropriations today.
Yeah, deadlines for getting the bills out of suspense, appropriations committees is gonna be tomorrow, so then maybe.
Oh, it's 8, yeah. Senate appropriations is today.
Yeah.
Assembly's tomorrow.
And just to give a brief update, maybe Derek, you can do 1132 and 1274.
Sure, so 1132, got out of approach, and the assembly floor, it's now open to Senate. We anticipate it being heard sometime in the mid-June, but we feel comfortable that it's gonna pass.
Which one is it?
1132 is the authority issue for
Okay.
the imminent substantial endangerment, and I believe it was 50 to 10.
15 to 13, eventually they added on, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
But it,
quite support for it. I think you got a couple Republican votes on that bill, which was good. AB 1274 by Assembly Member O'Donnell, that's the smog abatement bill. That's in Assembly approves on suspense file, and that's being heard tomorrow. Tomorrow, and there's really no significant opposition to it, but I think there was some concern by the California New Car Use Association on if they have a car that's 7 years old and they're about to sell, they have to smog it, so they kind of want to not have to, since it's smog, be able to waive that ability to pay that $24 fee that the consumer would have to pay in year 8. So
I think that was being addressed with a letter of clarification, and I think that issue will go away.
and then that's again going to get out of the approach hopefully tomorrow, and then it has to get out of the assembly floor next week. So that's where we're at.
Okay, anything else legislative? All right, so the minutes on mobile source and stationary source should be available very soon. Tech committee, MSRC, ARB. That is it. Any public comment on the board agenda? Okay. Any other business by any member of the group?
Well, I'll just make a general comment. As I was driving over this morning on radio station KPCC, that's Pasadena. There was an extensive discussion, I would say 15, 20 minutes, with Adrian Martinez of Earth Justice, and about a recent visit of the governor down with Assemblywoman Garcia, and talking about, maybe this has been reported in the print media, I haven't caught up with it. But anyway, trying to inform the governor about local toxic air pollution problems in particular. Evidently, Representative Garcia, Assemblywoman, was asked about her concern about cap and trade, and as might be expected, she expressed more interest in the problems associated with increased air pollution of a toxic nature. One issue being the planned expansion of the 710 freeway in the lower part of the county. I'm trying to think what other topic was discussed. But anyway, I don't know if it's available online or not, but I found it rather an in-depth, detailed discussion, quite frankly. Also, the same radio station, about 20 minutes later, had a rather extensive discussion with a representative from the wind energy industry, discussing about how the expansion of wind energy was enabling better integration with solar power, resulting in less need for fossil fuel generated energy. KPCC is a very progressive station, as you might expect, and its reach is quite extensive, way beyond just the western San Gabriel Valley. Also, I just mentioned in passing, the local newspaper, Pasadena Star News, San Gabriel Valley Tribune, and so on, have given very extensive coverage to air pollution matters in recent years. Again, you may be aware of that, but I find it very refreshing that both the local radio media, at least, and the local print media are paying a great deal of attention to serious air pollution problems. And I believe in a serious effort to educate the public about this, which is a very important function.
So there was a story on Here and Now about NPR show about how geography affects air pollution. I didn't catch it, but I heard the teaser for it, but I didn't. It's kind of, for us, it's kind of like no duh, but
Well, you know, there was an article.
for normal civilians.
There was an article in today's paper talking about this is the worst beginning of the smog season since 2008 or something. But last year was a pretty bad year for ozone also. I think we had 16 days over the phantom 1 hour standard, which I always look at as kind of the canary. And so we'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, we've had a bad start to the smog season, and last year was bad. Hopefully it doesn't continue through the summer, but yeah.
I would just add, Dave, that with regards to the governor's visit and Assemblywoman Garcia's tour, we were pretty disappointed that they didn't reach out to us. So we're definitely reaching out to both the governor's office and the Assemblywoman's office. Again, just to sort of let them know a lot of things that are being done. And I think, in part, some of those concerns are reflected in AB 378, and that's why a lot of the air districts feel as if the work that they're doing hasn't been understood or recognized. So even though there was that tour and there was a lot of attention paid to it, we think that there's a lot of things that should have been part of that. And like, for instance, the work that we're doing in Paramount is a good example of addressing toxics in the community, making a real difference. And unfortunately, that didn't come out.
All right, any other business from the group? Any public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. I guess we're not adjourning till, I mean, we're not reconvening till August.
Yeah. Why did they?